Many small landlords have a great degree of difficulty with and frustration with the Residential Tenancies Board, and not just with the board but with the whole residential tenancies situation in Ireland from a legal perspective. I myself have my own story which has recently thankfully come to some sort of a conclusion, but it is an intensely frustrating process. In my particular case, I had a tenant who didn't pay rent some maybe 2.5 years ago, and I brought him to the Residential Tenancies Board. And when we went to the Residential Tenancies Board, there was an online adjudication, and at that the adjudicator, having listened to the evidence of both parties and having listened in particular to the employee or the tenant, telling the adjudicator that I was the best landlord in the country and that I was the best landlord that he ever had and I was the last word in the landlord, I fell for it. And the adjudicator then put it to me that we could mediate some sort of a settlement or come to some sort of a settlement agreement, and I agreed to it. And I bought the soft soap, I drank my own Kool-Aid quite frankly, and I fell for it. And within a matter of weeks the fella had paid off the rent. However, no sooner had he paid off the rent than he stopped paying again. So he hasn't paid rent now for well over 12 months. And so I had to bring him again to the Residential Tenancies Board not too long ago, during maybe 6 months ago. And we had an adjudication. And at the adjudication it was quite clear that he hadn't paid rent and that I was going to win my case. And I was fed up at this stage. I wanted not just the rent, but more importantly, and quite frankly, I didn't even expect to get the rent, and I don't expect to get the rent. But what I actually wanted was to get him out of the property, to get vacant possession, and to be able to let it to somebody else. In other words, I'm prepared to chalk it down to experience and say I've been absolutely stiffed by this fella. I'm going to take it on the chin, take one for the team, write off the rent, and let the property to somebody else. But obviously, at a difficulty, I need to get vacant possession. So we went to the adjudication. The adjudicator found in my favour, of course, because there was no evidence of any payment of rent. There was no rent paid, and I got an order from the adjudicator that I was entitled to the outstanding rent, which wasn't paid, plus I was entitled to vacant possession. However, the problem was that there's a 21-day period during which either party can appeal that decision. And if the person appeals the report prepared for the Residential Tenancies Board, well, then it goes to a tenancy tribunal. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'm not getting paid any rent. I have my agent call on him to hand up vacant possession and hand over the keys, and he said, I'm not going anywhere until I get a council house, until I get a house from the local authority. So I'm stuck with a situation then where I have a favourable report from the adjudication. I won my case, he hasn't appealed, and yet I can't get him out of the property. Having said that, I'm perfectly happy to wait the 21 days for the appeal, if there is any, and there wasn't any. But if there was an appeal, well, then I'd have to wait a further, I don't know how long, 3 months or so, maybe 6 months, for a tenancy tribunal, and I might have to wait a further 3 months or 6 months for a decision. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, your man is living in the apartment, high on the hog, not paying any rent, and I can't get my hands on it. The good news is that eventually the 21 days had elapsed and this fella didn't put in an appeal. I still have the problem though. I have a problem that I need to get the determination from the Residential Tenancies Board. So I got a termination order, or a determination order rather. This is the determination order, because without this determination order I can't go any further. He still has the right to appeal, but once the determination order issues, then I'm in business. However, the fella is still in the apartment, he's not paying rent, and I can't get him out. There's an information sheet that comes with the determination order from the Residential Tenancies Board, and this says, order made in my favour. If the other person refuses to comply with the order, and this fella was refusing to comply because he said he wasn't moving out, he wanted a council house and he wasn't moving until he got one, then you may take the case to the district court for enforcement. So here I am 12 months or longer after he stopped paying rent, And now I have the opportunity with my determination order from the Residential Tenancies Board to go to the district court and get an order to get him out of the property. This involves A, money, and B, time. And you don't know how long it's going to take to get into the district court. You don't know whether your case is going to be adjourned or kicked back. You don't know what's going to happen, but you're looking at time and you're looking at money. And only after I get an order from the district court can I actually enforce the determination order from the Residential Tenancies Board. Remember, back at the ranch, this fella is living in my property, free of charge, no rent, and he's working. I know he's working, and I can do nothing to get him out of the property, and I'm kicking my heels, waiting for the 21 days to run down so that a determination order will in due course issue, and it has, and then I have to go to the district court to get another order which is legally enforceable. In other words, what the Residential Tenancies Board gives me is not legally enforceable. And remember, I've already been at the Residential Tenancies Board twice. I was there for the adjudication, and I was there for a prior adjudication which eventually ended up in some sort of a settlement arrangement where, as I say, he paid me rent and then stopped paying rent again. It's an intensely frustrating process. If you have a property, you should be entitled to get your hands on the property relatively quickly if the person that's in it on foot of an agreement is in breach of the agreement. It's as simple as that. And this situation, the fella hadn't paid rent for over 12 months. He has thankfully handed in the keys now to my agent, and I can go and let the place, after spending maybe $3,000 getting it right again, after fixing it up. I'll be able to let it again, but I'll have to spend $3,000. But the point is that if he appealed that determination order, then he'd have me over a barrel, because we'd have to wait then for a tenancy tribunal. We might be waiting, as I said, 3 months, 6 months, I don't know how long, and then we would have to wait for a decision of that tribunal. Meanwhile, at the tribunal, all we're doing is doing the same thing again. He hasn't paid me the rent. Oh, I accept that, I haven't paid rent, I lost my job or whatever. Bottom line is, complete waste of time. Meanwhile though, he's living there high on the hog in my apartment, not paying rent. And I have to sit idly by and stomach it basically, and wait then, as I say, for a determination order to issue, and then trot off to the district court to get an order to actually get him out of the place. Now, as I say, thankfully he handed in the keys to my agent. I can let it now, but it has been an intensely frustrating process. It's been slow, it's been costly, it's cost me a lot of rent, but to be honest about it, if I could just write the rent off, forget about it, get my apartment back, get the keys, let it to somebody else, then I'm a grown up, I'm an adult, I'm perfectly prepared to take it on the chin, I'm perfectly prepared to write it off and move on. But the problem was, the more frustrating thing of all is, not only does he owe me all this rent, not only is he living in the bloody place rent free, but I can't get my apartment back. That is very, very frustrating. And I'm a man of law. I can't just breach the law, ignore the law, engage in any sort of unlawful activity, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to do that. But I would accept and acknowledge that for a small landlord with one property or two properties, that the Residential Tenancies Board, the process, the protections for the tenant and so on, can be a frustrating process. And as I say, the most frustrating part has been me not being able to get my hands on my own property after over 12 months of non-payment of rent, and having to go to the district court if he didn't hand in the keys. Thankfully, as I say, he handed in the keys, but if he didn't, I could be waiting another 9 months, no rent, and having to go to the district court and then serving a district court order on him to get him out. And how I get him out even then, I don't know. But thankfully it's worked out okay. But as I say, if you are a small landlord, I feel your frustration, quite frankly. Hope you find the video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you hit the thumbs up button down below. Thanks a lot.